Hi, it's Dorothy Guinan with Scrapbooking Quebec. This is the last video in my mini-series Power Scrapping, a layout share for the 11 pages I created using 49 in Market's Vintage Artistry Sunburst collection. This was an 8-part series in which I shared a fun and fast, streamlined approach to using collections. There is a playlist on my channel with all of these videos. I absolutely loved creating this series, and I truly hope you enjoyed it as well. I would like to extend a big thank you to Cindy. A surprise gift from her on Christmas Eve touched my heart so much that I decided to make this series and share my joy with all of you. I am well aware this wasn't her intention or expectation, but I absolutely loved creating this series, so thank you, Cindy. Now let's get started. Throughout this layout share, I am going to identify each double page layout as page pack number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because in video 3, I created 5 double page packs. And in that video, I drew up designs for each one of them. This one was from page pack number 1. And I started by creating this page here. I call it a focal point page design. Basically, I have one kind of fancy page, and in a moment, I'll talk about this one. That is a complementary page. So what I did here was I created a layered photo mat here with one photo, and I created 2 embellishment clusters. Now I decided to place the embellishment clusters right on top of imaging that was already printed on this paper from 49 in Market. So you can see a seahorse here, and you can see some other imaging underneath. Basically what I did was I built up on top of that. The same thing up here in the top right. Now, for my photo here, in my kit that I showed in video 1, there was one product pack. It was full of envelopes and folders, and you can see here, this is a file folder. What I did was I turned it into a pocket, and I took one of the pieces of ephemera. This was like a Well, it was flat like this, and I folded it over and turned it into a book. I added this little other piece of ephemera here, and I added 3 extra photos. So now I can tuck them in the pocket. And I have one photo on top of this file folder. For the page 2 design, the complementary page, I created a 9-block grid. So basically here, I used a simple stories template, a page template. So that made this job easier. You're going to see later on in this layout share, there is one more page that I created using the very same 9-block grid. Actually, the other one I did it on YouTube. And what I did here was I simply created one embellishment cluster, and this formed a visual triangle across the 2 pages. If I am to look at the original design that I created in video 3, I pretty much followed the same thing. I make very rudimentary designs. The only difference is I'm looking here at my design. I have the file folder kind of tucked above the photo, and what I ended up doing was putting my photo on top of the file folder. So again, in video 3, I kind of explained I do a streamlined approach to creating these designs. It's kind of like instinct. I just draw them fast, permitting myself to change it along the way. And so I am going to point out where I made changes, but you are going to notice that most of them pretty much look like the designs that I created. So that is for page pack number 1. Now I'm going to show you 2 more pages. This is for page pack number 2. So this is a double page spread here. Once again, you can see I have this 9-block grid here. This one I did do it on YouTube. But first, let's talk about my focal point page, because when I create layouts, double page spreads that start with a focal point page and then I stretch it into a double page spread with a complementary page, I always start with the focal point page. So this one does look different than the other one. What I did for this one is I basically cut a hole in this green paper with the foliage at the bottom. Then I double matted a photo, I put it in the middle, and I created a shelf with a bunch of embellishing and then just kind of brought it up along the side of the photo. This is probably the page I had the most trouble with. When I started the page, I cut a hole in the green paper and I made a mistake, and from there on forward, I kept having to fix my mistakes, but in the end, I do quite like it. What I did differently is, if you look at my page design, which has this circle here and the photo with a mat with a bunch of embellishing, I did have an envelope here. And this envelope would have come from this embellishment pack, which I had a lot of fun with. I was going to use one of these envelopes here, and I decided not to do it at the last minute. And that's okay. Like I mentioned just a few moments ago, I draw these designs quickly and I permit myself to make changes along the way. And by permitting myself to make changes, that's what allows me to make these designs quickly. If I thought I had to follow the designs exactly, I would take forever drawing up the design. So that is definitely part of this streamlined approach, which is to simply allow yourself the idea that yes, you can change along the way. Nothing is set in stone. So here is the complementary page. And right off the bat, you can see on my original design, I had my focal point page on the left and the grid on the right. When I was creating the grid, I decided to put it on the left instead. So that's an example of changing my mind along the way. Very same thing as the previous grid, simply a 9-block grid. I used that Simple Stories template and I created one embellishment cluster, which kind of formed a visual triangle with this. And the visual triangle I created in this one, because this is just like one big embellishment cluster, I separated the pink flowers into 3 spots, and that created a visual triangle. Now, just for the fun of it, I'm going to bring out this other 9-block grid. It's obviously the same page design, but they do look different because there are different photos and different material. And there's another thing that makes pages look different: the complementary page. When I create a page 2 design like this and pair it with a focal point page, usually the 2 pages aren't identical. So that is another way that these pages 2 side by side look different, because even though one design might be identical, the other one often isn't. Now we're going to move on to page pack number 3. Move this out of the way. So here is page pack number 3, design number 3. Oh, I forgot to add a bit of adhesive here, I can see. Anyway, you can see, once again, this is that very same focal point page design that I showed you earlier, but this complementary page is different. For this one here, I'll talk about it in a minute, I used a different style grid. But this one here, just like the page I showed you a few moments ago, is the same page design. So basically you can see here, I have a layered photo mat, just like here. I have a file folder from that embellishment pack. I have a photo on top of it. I have stuff inside my file folder. And I also have 2 embellishment clusters, once again, that I placed on top of the imaging that was already on the paper. So those 2 pages are identical in design, but they look different with different colors, different photos, different material. So it just makes it really quick to create a layout using a design that you've already used. but you have to know that with different photos, different colors, different material, it does look different each time. And don't forget, I have the very same orientation, but you can flip these designs like this. You can flip them all around, and each time you flip it, it's going to give you a different look. So back to page pack number 3. Here is the coordinating page I created to go with it. This one here, I used, once again, one of those simple stories page templates. Very, very simple. So there I have it. So basically, once again, I filled it up with photos. I repeated the same paper. So there's repetition across the 2 pages. And when I placed my, I'm getting tongue-tied here. When I placed my embellishment cluster, I placed it so that it created a visual triangle across the 2 pages. Now, just for the fun of it, let's have a look at my original sketch. And this is pretty much it there. It's the very same thing there on the same side. This is my complimentary page. Yeah, not too many changes here. And this one, I did it on YouTube. Now we're going to look at page kit number 3. This here. So this one isn't like any of the others. Basically, what I did was I'm considering this my focal point page, and this is what I created first. So what I did for this one is I let this envelope here, which was one of those pockets that was in that product I showed you earlier, that embellishment pack with pockets and envelopes. I basically used that as my jumping off point and then added some photos here and 2 embellishment clusters in the top left. I'm sorry, top right and bottom left with a title down here. This one was really quick to create. And in this giant pocket, because if you look at it, it is huge, I have these tags here, and on the tags, I have extra photos. So this one, there are no extra photos. I put it in there for show, but there are some extra photos there. And for the complimentary page, it's a very simple page that I frequently make. Basically, this is my focal point page. This is my complimentary page. I just filled it up with photos. You can see I have 5 photos here, and in the 6th spot I simply added a journaling box and 1 more embellishment cluster, once again creating a visual triangle across the 2 pages. I'm just bringing out this die set here because in my video, in video 3, when I was making these plans, I had mentioned that I had giant tag dies from Elizabeth Craft Designs that I knew would fit in these huge pockets, and this is the die set, so I get a lot of use out of that. Here is the design that I drew up in video 3. So this is pretty much, oh, I can see what I did differently. I don't go into too much detail when I draw these designs. As you can see, I basically knew where I was going to be placing the main elements here, which was that giant envelope here with 2 photos and 2 embellishment clusters. Now, what I can see that I did differently is on the original design, I had the complimentary page on the left. I decided to go, oh, no, I'm sorry. I take that back. On the original page, I had the complimentary page on the right. I have placed it on the left. And when I was doing my embellishment clusters on the original page, I had put the embellishment clusters in the top left and bottom right. What I did instead was I put them in the top right and bottom left. So I basically switched that up again. Just like I mentioned earlier, these are rudimentary designs that I make quickly, permitting myself to change it along the way. But you can see it's definitely a good jumping off point. I pretty much followed the design. But again, I can't tell you enough how important it is when I'm making these decisions. In order to do it quickly, I always have in the back of my mind, I can always change my mind. So now I'm going to show you the last page kit. This was page kit number 5. For this one, I did it on YouTube and I created it as a double page spread. So here it is, and I'll look at the design in a minute. But basically for me, this is pretty much a classic double page spread. What I did was I created a map that went across the 2 pages and then put my photos on top of it. I started with this giant sunburst here because there was a paper with a big round sunburst. That was my jumping off point. Then I created a shelf. I placed my photos on top of it. This is one of those embellishment envelopes there from that embellishment pack I showed you earlier. There's 2 pockets here. So when I was creating my designs, I factored this into the design because it's quite huge. And I created 2 embellishment clusters in 2 opposite corners. So in the pocket here, in the bottom one, I have these postcards which were in the ephemera pack with my journaling there. And in the top here, I have 2 cards with little tabs. Those are from the ephemera pack. And on each card, I have extra photos. So I have 2 on each card. Again, the main photos for my story are visible on the page, but these are travel photos and I tend to take a lot of photos when I travel, so those are just extra ones. And if a viewer wants to see them, they will have to remove the page protector to see what's in the pocket, but they can see that something is there and the important parts are all visible on the page. So if I'm to look at my original page design here, it's pretty much it. The only thing I can see differently is the embellishment clusters. I have the title and embellishment clusters here and another cluster here, and I did it in the opposite. And I remember in this video when I was doing that, what determined the placement of my embellishment clusters was my title. I had kind of played around with that. I had played around with putting it here on the shelf. I had played around with putting it here. In the end, I liked it on the white cardstock, and then I decided to put my embellishment cluster around my title, which dictated the position of the opposite embellishment cluster because I did it in kitty corners. So that is the layout for page pack number 5. And that was what I had decided upon. Now, last week, I decided to create one more layout with my leftovers, and that's what I'm about to show you right now. So I created this one with leftovers. Now, in that video, I copied one of the other pages that I created. So in this 11-page layout share, there are 3 pages with identical page design. I'm going to show you the other ones. There's this one here and this one. So let's have a look at them all. This is the same page design. Now this one here is done on white cardstock, so I don't have all of this imaging on the background paper. Basically what I did was I created a layered photo mat like I did here. I have a file folder on top of it. In addition to that, I added a bit more stuff in the layers here, these tickets, and I created 2 embellishment clusters in the top right and bottom left with my title. In addition to that, this one here is on just a 12 by 12 paper. For this one here, I created a frame style foundation page. So all of that makes the page look very different, but it was the same jumping off point, and for that reason it was very quick to create. Same thing here. This is the very same page design, just like what I showed you earlier, but again, it looks very different. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this layout share. That's it for my 7-part turned 8-part mini-series Power Scrapping. Again, there is a playlist on my channel in case you're interested. If you enjoyed this video and series, I'd greatly appreciate a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, Scrapbooking Quebec, I would be thrilled and honored if you did. If you are a subscriber, thank you very, very much. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.